come up now, and once I can.
Got it. Good, thank you. And this might be one where a lot of people do go back to the recording just to check little specifics around exactly how we quantify some of the cells of the matrix, which I'm going to take you through shortly. Okay, so this module, and Wally is back. This module, I'm going to point you at some safe system assessment guidelines and things, but we're going to spend a lot of time doing this thing we call the safe system assessment matrix. Matrix, just a fancy word for sort of table, but we're going to show you how to write up a safe system assessment report. And we're going to practice a little bit more categorization into primary and supporting treatments, which we talked about earlier. This is, the process of a safe system can't be done without understanding the fundamentals of the safe system, which is what we started out early doing. This is the application of it and the specific assessment. Where do you write numbers and what do you actually do from that sense? So we did do well in talking about that holistic safe system, the principles of the safe systems, biomechanics of injury, like how much force can we take in different crash types as humans, that fundamental understanding that we're going to try to minimize mistakes, but some will still happen and we need to manage energy, manage mistakes. And that we have this responsibility as system designers and those managing, designing, operating the road network, that we've got to create these environments that are safe, and we can't push blame to road users for what they've done. So those were the principles that we'd gone through, and like we are aiming at that zero death and serious injury. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but it's not going to happen in the next 5 years, but we really have to be sort of making decisions with that in mind, in a similar way that we do with, workplaces and workplace health and safety. And we don't just say, well, improve things a little bit, but, it's never possible to get rid of it. No, we, in workplace, have that absolute determined fundamental philosophy. It is unacceptable for death and serious injury, and we will not stand for any of that. And we need to take that attitude onto the roads in the design, management, operation of a road network. So we spent a lot of time on this, didn't we? Exposure and likelihood and severity, the three aspects that we're going to use in the next few slides to start to quantify risk. And then I'll show you how that is a naturally elegant way to understand safe system principles. When we looked at that severity aspect in my summary here, we looked at these graphs and we got ideas of some particular crash types that we were thinking about and how bad they are for humans. And we looked at some different speed angles of vehicle crashes and pedestrians and cyclists. And I've put a few of these at the start of the notes for this module, just so you can easily refer back to these as you make calls. And I also had that colorful chart that we use with some scoring numbers in it, which I will bring up a little bit later on in this module, just to take you back to that, because that's a nice, easy way to start to get an initial feel for how bad a crash is going to be and what we should score it. So let's get into it. How do we actually do a safe system assessment now? Well, I thought, if, Marissa, we have a poll, which it's okay if we don't, this was more just finding out, has anybody actually done a safe system assessment before, or have you received one, or do you not know what we're talking about at all? Is there a poll? It is. Yeah, good. What has been your involvement with safe system assessments? So this may pop up on your screen. If it doesn't pop up on your screen, just, write in the chat maybe. How much experience have you had with safe system assessments? From nothing, no experience, what are you talking about now, to absolutely live, breathe, eat safe system assessments, love those, and anywhere in between. Okay, let's close that off. And let's share the results there. Okay, so a lot of people down that end have sort of heard the term and it's been thrown around a fair bit, but yeah, really don't know much more than just the term itself. And a couple of people live, breathe, and eat safe system assessments. That's wonderful. Well, you'll be able to help out answering some of the questions and getting involved from that perspective. But a little bit of a mix there. That's good. That's good. Let's, sorry, I've ended that. And I'm going to go from basics on this. We can't do this without understanding the principles of the safe system and the different users and particular attributes. So that's why we spent that time doing that. And really, you'll see in the next slide, exposure, likelihood, and severity. You have to be able to categorize. So we needed to spend the time doing that. Safe system assessments and the process is documented in the Austroads Safe System Assessment Framework, which is a document. I wasn't one of the authors of. I was on a working group that was looking at this, and lots of different debate about specifics of it, and using numbers or not using numbers, and the like. But in the end, they produced something that hadn't actually been worked through a lot in terms of practical use of a safe system assessment framework, because nothing existed. So yes, they did some sort of mock sort of trials and things like that. But since the release of that document in 2016, it's a lot of safe system assessments have been done now, and we've identified some things that probably need a bit of a tweak in this document, and there's some industry practice which is slightly different, but generally the document still remains the good sort of source of here's how you can run through this safe system assessment framework. So some of the jurisdictions then said, well, thank you, Austroads, and we like that, and we certainly want to be using it. And you know, we've had practitioners using it for a few years. We're going to put out some guidance to just sit under the Austroads guide or above the Austroads guide, depending on how you want to do it, just to clarify how we're going to do it in our particular jurisdiction, and clarify anything we don't absolutely agree with the way Austroads says to do it. So the Victorian government produced the Safe System Assessment Guidelines. Then the South Australian government took the Victorian guidelines and put their own front cover on it, and did a global replace of VicRoads with DIPTI at the time, now DIT. Same document, same process, same clarifications, they're the same. So that's become a little bit of a industry standard as such, in terms of from the Austroads document, some particular application aspects. So what I'll be taking you through now conforms with these documents and the Austroads one. There's been little bits of pieces in Queensland and in New South Wales in how things could be done. What we're going to present to you is pretty much industry practice across Australia, and you'll get a template to use, which generally conforms with all of that. So you'll be able to do that for your projects. I'm going to start at one of the outputs. One of the things that is produced and documented like front and center of a safe system assessment. And this is a graph like this. And the graph, you'll see, has some crash types. Run-off road, head-on, intersection, pedestrian, cyclist, motorcyclist, and then other. And you see these different scores put on these different bars. And that is the alignment with safe system principles. Now, the lower the score, the better. Think about it maybe as risk. The lower the risk, the better. So anytime we see high scores, we know that that's an area that's not aligning well with safe system principles. And what we're representing here is 3 options for an intersection. The red here, though, for each of these is the existing conditions, right? For this one, they have a plan, a design, a concept to build a roundabout at this intersection, or to build a modified T signalized intersection or build a conventional T signalized intersection. So there's 3 options there in that optioneering phase. They're thinking which one is going to be better. They're thinking about all sorts of things. They're thinking about their traffic model. They're thinking about the appropriateness for other strategic objectives in transport. They're thinking about the costs. They're thinking about the community acceptance of these different things, and they want to ensure, well, can we get the best alignment with safe system principles? Also, can we understand which is the best aligned with safe system principles which we've committed to? So the first thing you do is you go out and you assess what's currently there. Okay, currently it's not any of these. It's just some sort of intersection. We haven't seen this one, but so you make you do a set of scores for existing risk for all these crash types. Then you get the roundabout design and you imagine, okay, they've built a roundabout now and they've built it exactly as I'm seeing it designed here. And then you score again. Then you put the roundabout one away and then you get the next design out and you score it again. And then you score the next one. And so then you can present them with this, and it's clear to them then where the risks are. You know, if they build each of these, where are the risks that remain? Where are the areas where we might need to look a bit more, like cyclists? Do we need to do some more here because they're sitting out as the highest risk road user under all of the scenarios, all these designs, and especially the roundabout sets out even higher, but it seems to be better in some of these other categories. So you can see how you can build this picture for those making decisions around these projects. So that was what's going to be like the output. Now, I'm going to now start you on the process journey you would go through to get to the stage of being able to produce that. And the first thing you're going to need to do is sit down with your client and understand their project. Why are they doing this project? What's the current traffic numbers, the current number of pedestrians, cyclists? Have they made commitments to different things? What's the function of the road? What's the speed environment? Are there cyclists in the area? What's the vehicle composition? What's the movement and place categorization? These are just prompt starter questions. These ones happen to be in the Austroads guide. You can ask whatever you want to try to get your head around this project, what they're planning, what they want to achieve, and all of that. Okay, so it's to help you with context. Some of these help you refine your scoring and that production of that graph. Some of them actually help you in the next phase, which is to give them recommendations on how they can improve things. The more you know about their strategic objectives and what they're trying to achieve with this project, the better you can tailor some of your recommendations and things that you suggest they have a look into to improve the safety of their project. This is practically often done in a meeting online these days. It used to be, get in the same room, roll out the roll plot, all stand around it, talk about it, but it's often now done and somebody will talk to the project. This is what we're planning to do. This is why, we've done a planning study and it said this, and there's a traffic model and the model says this. And then you ask lots of questions. Well, what's happening with that big vacant land there? Is that going to be developed in the future? What does that look like? And get a real feel for the project. Sometimes on smaller safe system assessments, it may be fairly obvious what they're doing, and there's not as much time and conversation in this, but gathering context is important. And then you go into the safe system assessment matrix, and this is it. Like, this is the meat of a safe system assessment. There's certainly other things we do which are really important, but this is the meat of the assessment. And you'll see that it has 3 rows: exposure, likelihood, and severity. Okay. You see why we were banging on about exposure, likelihood, severity. Tell us the categorization. Tell us what influences that. And then on the top, we've got run-off road, head-on, intersection. And those are crashes involving passenger vehicles and potentially heavy vehicles, but vehicles, right? So that's like a car running off the road, or two cars head-on crashing, or a car hitting a car at the intersection. Okay, those are those types of crashes. Pedestrian crashes are any crash that involves a pedestrian being struck and they're the ones that get injured. So if a car turns at an intersection and hits a pedestrian crossing the road at the intersection there, or in your mind, you're predicting that, you go, oh, I can see that crash could happen. Even though it happened at an intersection, we categorize that into the pedestrian crashes. We account for that there. If you're worried about a vehicle running off the road and then, you know, is it maybe a sweeping bend and there's a bus stop right outside, you know, on the outside of the sweeping bend, and you go, oh, I'm just a bit worried a vehicle comes in here too fast, leaves the road, and then it just hits the bus stop, and there's people waiting at the bus stop. Okay, that in your mind, imagining that, you know, hitting the pedestrians, because they're stating the pedestrians waiting for the bus, that's accounted for in pedestrians. If you're thinking about, okay, they've run off the road and the occupants of the vehicle, they're going to get injured when they hit this rigid bus stop as well, that's accounted for in the run-off road. Cyclists, any crashes where the cyclist is the one that's going to be injured. So again, like we could have a crash involving a vehicle turning left over a cyclist at an intersection. That's cyclist crash, right? Even though it happened at an intersection, it's cyclist crash. And the same with motorcyclists. So doesn't matter where it is on the road environment, if it's a motorcycle, is the one we imagine getting injured in a crash, it's motorcycle. It's accounted for in motorcycles. So, you know, if you're worried about a cyclist hitting a pedestrian, which you would still account for, you would be attributing that in the pedestrian, assuming the pedestrian is the one you're worried about getting injured from that incident, or maybe you're worried about both getting, and then you would attribute it and account for it in both columns. The other crash category, this is to pick up anything you don't feel has been appropriately identified in any of these other crash types. And so common other crash types are railway level crossing crashes, crashes with trams or light rail, sideswipe crashes between passenger vehicles, rear end crashes, if they are at a mid-block location. So what do I mean by that? If your crash is somebody's waiting at, like, slams on the brakes on the approach to an intersection, and then a car hits them from behind, in your imagination of what future crashes could happen, that's actually an intersection, because it's generated from the intersection crash. But if it's just a pedestrian crossing mid-block or a school crossing or something like that, and you're worried about people rear-ending there, then you put that in the other category. So hopefully that makes sense there. So those are the crash categories, the crash types, and we want to understand how many road users are exposed to this crash type, and what's the chance that that crash will actually happen for an individual there, and then how bad is it actually going to be if that does happen? What's the actual forces, impacts, death and serious injury we expect as a result of it? Now, Marissa, I'll pause in a second just to check if I need to cover anything before we delve into each of the cells of this matrix and sort of start to unpack exposure likelihood and severity for each of these crash types.
Did you want to take a question now?
Yeah, sorry.
No, you said pause in a second, but then you
yeah, and then I
took a drink of water, so it wasn't. That's all right. Ken, is there is there a requirement for independence in undertaking an SSA? And if so, does understanding that strategic context jeopardize the SSA author's independent position?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the general practice is independence within safe system assessment, but it's not as rigid as it is for road safety audits. And strategic, yes, understanding the strategic context is not about changing any of the scoring or anything like that. So you do need to sort of, in one sense, you could probably do strategic context after you've done your scoring and things like that, because it's about making helpful recommendations. It is kind of the same way in a road safety audit, though. Like when you do a road safety audit, you understand a bit about the project, because in most jurisdictions, we make recommendations in road safety audits. Okay, New South Wales is the only jurisdiction that doesn't make recommendations, so it's a little bit different. But to assist you in making meaningful recommendations, you really do get some understanding of what is the project, what are they trying to achieve. So thank you. Good question.
Yeah. And someone else is asking, is exposure really only related to the AADT?
Well, yes. Under a safe system assessment, yes. And this is where safe system assessment framework is slightly different to how for 50 years we've looked at the term exposure in road safety. And sort of a lot of, this is one thing that trips up a lot of new safe system assessors, is that they want to pack more into exposure than the traffic volume. Like they want to do things like time on the road or distance to cross the road or something like that. And in order to not double count things in a safe system assessment matrix, that is not defined as exposure in a safe system assessment framework. I tell you, like if I was doing a study 10 years ago around road safety, I probably would have called that exposure, the amount of time you're exposed to risk as such. But in order to account for this without double counting, the exposure to run-off road crashes and head-on crashes and intersection crashes is simply the AADT, the number of vehicles going through that particular point. We would account then for the distance to cross and those sort of things in the likelihood point there. Just... is that all good, Marissa? Sorry,
No, that was all good. That was it for now. Thanks, Ken.
Okay, awesome. Keep the questions coming in, though. I love that clarification. We are at the pointy end of this, and getting your head around those specifics is what we want. Okay, so let's delve into that a little bit. So we're now thinking about runoff road crashes for passenger vehicles or maybe heavy vehicles as well. And we're thinking, okay, how many vehicles, how many people are exposed to the possibility of running off the road? And we do that by putting the AADT down. Now, we're going to want to get numbers here, and AADTs are numbers. So AADT is annual average daily traffic, for those who don't know that term, and it is your counts of how many vehicles actually go through this point in the average day. But if you have, say, 4,000 vehicles going down this road, we don't actually put the number 4,000 in here. We go to what we call the scoring reference sheet. And what it has is each of these columns, so exposure, likelihood, and severity, and then references those to a score of a 0 or a 1. And then if I jump down a little bit further, a 2, a 3, or a 4. And so a 4, for example, for exposure says here volumes of vehicles that might be involved in a particular crash type. So we think about runoff road now, that might be involved in a run-off road crash are very high, or the road is very long. So therefore exposure is very high. Now that bit mentioned in the Victorian guidance, they just tweaked a few things. That was one of them. So we're not thinking about the length of the road. We're thinking about the volume of vehicles on the road. So the AADT is greater than 10,000 vehicles a day. Now, when we get to the cyclists, pedestrians, and motorcycle crashes, it's greater than 100 vehicles a day or units a day crossing or walking along that bit or riding through that area. So that's a 4. Let's go down to a 3. A 3 is between 5,000 and 10,000 vehicles a day, AADT, or between 50 and 100 cyclists or pedestrians or motorcyclists. Let's go down to a 2. 2 is between 1,000 and 5,000, or 10 to 50 units a day. A 1 is less than 1,000 or less than 10. And a 0 is if there is no exposure to that crash type. So for example, there is no intersection, so there's no exposure to intersection crash types. Maybe if grade separated, there is no exposure to that. Maybe there are no pedestrians or there are no motorcycles. There is 0 exposure to that. Okay, so we said that there was, 4,000 vehicles a day. So where does that sit? Okay, 4,000. Well, it's between 1,000 and 5,000. So we go back and we go, okay, great. We're going to put a 2 in this cell of the matrix. So the exposure should be fairly specific. Like you shouldn't have too much trouble. As long as you're given AADT, or you're given pedestrian numbers or cyclist numbers or motorcyclist numbers, you just go to the scoring reference sheet, you find where it sits, and you document it. Then we go to the likelihood of crash. Now, to go to the likelihood of crash, we've now taken out of our mind the number of people or the number of vehicles that go through here for run-off road. And we look simply at the physical characteristics of that bit of road and say, what are the features that increase the chance of somebody leaving the road and running off the road? And what are the features that decrease the chance of somebody leaving the road, running off the road? And you can see a few dot pointed there. Well, the speed is going to be heavily influential. The geometry of the road, is it a windy road or is it just, absolutely straight? Does it have sealed shoulders? Are there barriers to be hit or not? So hitting that barrier is a crash. It increases the likelihood of a crash. We'll get to severity soon, and you'll see why that's much better thing to hit than a tree. But so we got barriers. How far are hazards from the edge of the road? Is it well lit? What's the has it got good line marking, good signs, good, so the delineation's good. What's the surface like? Is there lighting? Is it downhill? You can factor all sorts of things in there. You can see, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is where you get out, you look at the site, you imagine it, operating in different weather conditions and different times of day, and you dot point lots and lots of things you see out there. So you may say, well, it's a 60 km/h speed environment. It's straight. It's got sealed shoulders, and but there's trees at 4 meters off the edge. But there is that bit of buffer area. It's got curbing. It's got a good surface. It's got nice line marking, and you dot point lots of things down like that, both good and bad. And then you go, okay, let's have a look now at our scoring reference sheet, because I've taken down lots of information about this, but let's go and look at what do we get as a score here. For a 4, okay, let's say we'll start right at 4. The likelihood of individual road user error leading to a crash is high, given the infrastructure in place, e.g., high approach speeds to a sharp curve, priority movement control, filtering So filtering across several opposing lanes at high speed. So we've got some inherent, fundamentally challenging environments there for road users at that individual level, for mistakes to be made and for them to struggle to navigate through this area. Now we go to a 3, you can see we don't get a huge amount of information. It is likely that a given crash type will occur. Then we go to a 2 and it jumps down to it is unlikely that a given crash type will occur. We go to a 1, highly unlikely that a given crash type will occur. Then we go to a 0, and then it sort of says there's only minimal chance of crash occurring for individual road user given the infrastructure in place. Only extreme driver behavior or substantial vehicle failure could lead to a crash. This may mean, for example, a 2, traffic streams do not cross grade or pedestrians do not cross the road. So that little extra bit also got pushed over into there. So because that's an exposure one. So what I want you to do is concentrate on the first bit of that, which says only substantial vehicle failure or extreme driver behavior. Okay. You need to account for human natural mistake making, slight distraction, falling asleep. These are not extreme driver behavior things. So we're thinking about people being not concentrating much, running through red lights, these sort of things. You can't give those a 0, even if the infrastructure seems, perfect. You've got to say, well, humans, mistakes. So, maybe in these very, very good road environments that are all being designed brilliantly, you might be at a 1, but it's very, very, very hard to ever get a 0 for likelihood. So you take all of your thoughts and all the dot points you've put in there and you jump over here and you debate with your team. Oh, is this unlikely, or is this likely, or is this highly likely? What do you think? Well, and ah, and then you end up going, okay, well, we're going to make it unlikely 2. But you justify that, lots of dot points. And I'm going to go through severity now, and then I'll take questions. I see there's a few things coming in. So after we've done that, now we put aside the number of vehicles, we put aside the chance that a crash is happening. We now say a crash is happening. How bad is it going to be? And we say, well, what's going to influence that? Things like the speed, what they're going to hit when they run off the road, so is it barriers they're going to hit? Are they going to hit a tree? Or are they going to hit a culvert? Or are they going to hit like a big long building? Or are they just going to roll over in a paddock? And then we say maybe, is there any other factors in there we might have missed that are going to make this worse or better? And we go to our scoring reference sheet and we can look at these and read them through. And I'll read one of them. I'll read the 4 one. Should a crash occur, it is highly likely that it will result in a fatality or serious injury to the road user involved. Kinetic energies are high enough to cause fatal serious injury crashes. It is unlikely the forces will be dissipated before reaching the road user. So dissipation of forces is things like hitting a barrier system and running along and slowly washing off the speed, or hitting a big crash cushion, or these sorts of things. But to help you, to make your life a little bit easier here, for different crash types over here and different speeds, we've started to give you a general indication. Okay, we've got motorcyclists versus heavy vehicles. If it's happening at sort of that 30 to 40, we can be in the 3, but certainly up around the 60 or 70, starting to be in the 4 territory. And, maybe side impact for car versus car. Well, no, okay, maybe we can be a bit higher on that. You make a judgment call. There's a little bit of help for you there. All right, but you and ah about it. You still, in your safe system assessment matrix, you make points. You go, well, yeah, the speed is 60 km/h speed limit. Although the 95th percentile speed is actually 64. Okay, And okay, there's no barriers. There are those trees sitting out there, so that's a bit of a worry, and that's going to be much more severe when somebody hits that. And we're thinking about them running off the road. Now they're going to hit that. They might wash off a little bit of speed as they yaw, but they're still going to hit around the 50 km/h mark or so potentially. Maybe some going a little bit higher than that. So. Okay, I've got trees, power poles, and it's a car. We're sort of thinking about that one. Oh, we're sort of in the 3 range here, aren't we? Somewhere in that 3 range potentially. Maybe looking a little bit further, we want to go slightly either way, but I'm happy enough to give it a 3 for this after that justification. So you can see there, we've managed to score each of those cells for concentrating and focusing on cars and trucks leaving the road and striking objects. Marissa, questions?
Okay. We do have a few questions. Okay. You put traffic counts for AADT, but how do you monitor pedestrians? How do you sit there and count them?
Okay, so it's not our job as safe system assessors to do any counts. Okay, we ask for the information from the project team. Now, in some situations, yes, they may say, well, can you organize some counts? And then if your company does traffic counts, sure, you can, put down some tubes or sit there with a clipboard and do counts, or get, your cameras out, which just, the AI counting software now, they put cameras out for a couple of weeks and it counts pedestrians and cyclists and all those sorts of things. But if you're not given any of that information, you simply make a judgment call. From what you observe out there, you don't need to stay out there for hours and hours counting. You just observe. You talk to your client usually and you say, well, what do you think would be the number of pedestrians in the area? And they're pretty good usually. They'll know the area well. They'll give you an indication and you make a call. And you just would make sure in the cell here, you justify that. You say, no pedestrian counts were provided from site observations and discussions with the client. We've estimated it at 50 or, between 40 and 50 pedestrians a day, which is a score of 2.
Peter's just saying, what if you're the project team, small council, no resources?
Yeah, well, then you just make a judgment call on it and just jot it in there.
Yeah. Okay. Is the AADT for 2-way traffic or traffic in each direction?
It's 2-way traffic unless it's a divided carriageway, where then you can sort of almost do well, no, even in a divided carriageway, you do it's 2-way traffic.
Yeah. And looking at Tasmania, where traffic AADT is low, but the other areas are high due to poor road quality or high speed, does the first exposure skew the results?
Yes. So yes and no. So you will see shortly that this assessment methodology is not a so it's done at a relative nature, is what I'm trying to say. So what I mean by that is you are simply scoring off your existing conditions benchmark. You don't use this to compare sites, to compare investment allocations. Like, it's not like we go, okay, the federal government's putting out $100 million for projects based on the higher safe system assessment score to the lower safe system assessment score, because you will discover shortly there is too much subjectivity associated with this methodology. That would be the equivalent of the Fed saying, we'll give out $100 million worth of funding for workplace safety initiatives based on risk assessments from extreme risks down to low risks. Now, what you will end up getting is this big variation in risk assessment based on the risk assessment team, because they'll go, oh, I think that's high risk, or I think that's low risk, or they've got that element to it. It's not like an amazingly ironclad data-driven specific thing. It takes that judgment, that context. And so what we do is we say, no. Give us your existing condition score, which you will set as a team as a benchmark, and then tell us where things change as a result of that. So it's to guide that look, not as a particular score-based tool, if that makes sense. What you're looking for is relative scores.
Yeah. Okay. And just to add to that, Trevor's asked if there was a bus stop on one side of the road, would you factor in traffic only in the near lane or both lanes?
Sorry, say that again. Where's that one?
Just in the Q&A, if there was a bus stop on one side of the road, would you factor in traffic only in the near lane or both lanes?
You'd factor it in for both lanes. I mean, that's the AODT, the volume. And yeah, people are going to leave the road from either lane and potentially Clyde. Okay, there's less likelihood that they will from the other lane because they've got a bit more space to recover and the like. Certainly, don't. Okay, we can trip ourselves up by overthinking this like it is some precision tool, like for coming up with this precision score. It's not. Think of this just like any other risk assessment methodology. It's just we've broken out exposure into it. And instead of saying high, medium, low, we put numbers to it. Yep.
Question, do you conduct SSA solo part of the team? I think we'll go through that later in the session today.
We go to the next module when we come back next week. I'll talk to you a bit about that sort of stuff, but really we do like teams. Teams is good, although again, there's a little bit more flexibility under the Safe System Assessment protocols to do these individual ones. We do like teams though.
Yeah. Hayden is just saying he's seen fractions used for likelihood and severity in SSAs. Is this correct?
Yeah, good on you, Hayden. Yeah. It's a great question, and I'm glad you brought it up. So this was one. Remember when I said I was on the working group for this development of this? And one of the things I said in one of the workshops was, all right, I like this, putting numbers to stuff. This is great because, for a long time in road safety, we've been battling against traffic models, like the SIDRA report that comes in and it's got all these numbers and it looks we can't possibly go off level of service C and like there was like absolute no, look, you have to follow the model. And we're going there, but the risk, we feel the risk is high there. And then they have a different opinion. They're like, no, I don't think it is. And there's a little bit of beauty in having numbers and graphs because people start to take it a little more seriously. They're seeing now, okay, all right, we've got this. The safety assessment says this. Okay, they still question it, but so that's one good aspect. But when I was in that workshop, I said, okay, we're going to give this to technical people, and we're going to tell them to put numbers to it. They're going to just run this off a cliff, like in terms of numbers. And sure enough, within the first sort of year of safe system assessing, I saw some go to 2 decimal places. And you'll see shortly that we actually multiply down here to get our score for each crash type. And when you're multiplying now, and so we had these ridiculous things where people would have a score of 24.52789 for runoff road. And when you understand we're being somewhat subjective, we're making judgment calls, we're weighing things up. You can never be that precise with this road safety risk assessment, like ever. And it doesn't matter. Like you can go to those road safety models that are like super expensive and have like, 80, 90 variables in it. Okay, and it spits out a number, a risk score. Well, okay, that's a general indication still. The context, they can't account for all contexts. It just doesn't work. And in fact, a lot of the data and the research that they're using to come up with those numbers within those models is very, generic. Maybe it took 50 sites from the US that had different, had giveaway control and then were made into roundabouts. Well, those 50, have got all sorts of different scenarios and characteristics and all sorts of things. And we've looked at, well, how effective were they? And then that gets plugged into the model and then we're using it, right? Okay, it's going to give us a general indication. But anytime anybody gives you a road safety risk model that is precision, don't be fooled into thinking that actually is precision. So this is actually quite good. But what has ended up happening is that there is general acceptance to go to a half if you absolutely need to. The general advice is try and stick to whole numbers, but if you need to, you can go to a half. And the reason people often go to a half is just more because two members of the team can't agree. They go, no, that's a 2, that's a 3, that's 2, 3, 3. Okay, we're just going to go to 2.5 so we can continue on. But no more precision than that.
Okay, we've got one last question. Time for one more?
Yeah.
With an example such as dual carriageway with central median barrier, would the likelihood still yield at 1? Noting that there is still potential for a runoff road, but consequence would be less so due to barrier.
Yes, correct. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so hitting a barrier we account for in runoff road. That's a runoff road crash. So your likelihood can come up a little bit when you have continuous barrier systems, but you'll see that the severity just way down, and that multiplies through because this is what we do. We go 2 times 2 times 3 is 12, isn't it? Yeah. So that is our total risk score for runoff road. Now, if you were to put a 0 in any of these, multiplying anything by 0 makes 0, of course, doesn't it? So if you were actually there, it's never going to be a 0 for exposure to runoff road, but maybe intersection. If you don't have an intersection, you put a 0 there. It doesn't matter what the likelihood is or the severity. There's no intersection. There's no intersection crash because there's no intersection. If you are absolutely hand on heart confident that even with humans being humans, there's going to be no crashes, there's no chance of crash, you put a 0 there. It doesn't actually matter if that was 4 and a 4 because there will be no crashes. And this one I put a disclaimer on, but if you could say 0 there for severity, when crashes happen, nobody will be killed or seriously injured. We're very confident. They're all within safe system tolerances. We don't actually care what the exposure is and what the likelihood is because in all of those incidents, people will walk away from it, minor injury at the worst, and that aligns with what our objectives of the safe system are. The reason I put a little disclaimer on that one, and I should give it a little star, is that if you have found yourself in this situation, 4, 4, 0, it's going to have a lot of minor incidents. It's not good for traffic operations, and you'd want to. Sorry, I was trying to turn my notifications off. It's just going to result in sort of traffic disruption and the like. So you probably want to have a think about suggesting some things they could address on that. Let's do a little bit more, and then we'll have a stretch break, coffee break, fill up the water or whatever it is. But I think you've sort of seen now, you justify it with some dot points, you make a call on your score, and it's your risk rating. So you do it for runoff road crashes, you do it for head-on crashes, you do it then for intersection crashes. And you'll notice here, although I started to scribble on this already, that the AADD for intersection is actually the addition of both approaches. So the volume on one road and the volume on the other road, you add them up. You do it for other based on, often it's the vehicle numbers, but you may use other numbers. You do the pedestrians, cyclists, motorcyclists. And again, you may not be given that information. You make a judgment call on it. Generally, we talk about 1% of AADT for motorcyclists, 1 or 2%. 1% is a decent place to start if you're not on a popular motorcycle route. You know, if you're on the Great Ocean Road or Alpine Way or something like that, okay, you're probably going to go up much higher than that. But 1% of AADT is a good starting point for most sort of urban road environments or general freeways or highways. You're going to go through, you're going to dot point out all these things for head-on crashes, then for intersections, other pedestrians. Look, we're looking at, you know, what facilities are there, what's provided, how many lanes are they crossing, what's the speed, is there more likelihood? Cyclists, are there, you know, dedicated cycle ways or the like, and motorcyclists as well. And then we do it all for the severity of incidents. And when we've got multiple vehicles, we may factor in, okay, is there a high percentage of heavy vehicles? So if somebody head-on crashes, is there a chance they're going to head-on crash into a truck, which is going to be worse? Or is it, you know, what are the angles that crashes are going to happen at here? And you can see speed. It's going to be heavily influenced by the speed, the angle a bit, percentage of heavy vehicles. It's not to say we can't have high-speed areas, because we will have ensured that the you know, the severity of roadside hazards has been addressed to keep that down, or intersections have been designed in a way that you're not getting that severe impact. So percentage of heavy vehicles, which is a question that's coming in there. Okay, what is a high percentage of heavy vehicles? Yeah, over 10% you start to feel that's getting higher, and certainly up around 20%, which I think is higher. And for me, you know, at 10%, I'm probably not changing even the severity scores a huge amount. Up around 20%, I might start to nudge them up a little bit in terms of the outcomes of head-on crash expectation and the like. We know actually likelihood of a heavy vehicle leaving the road or leaving their lane is less. So that balances in that a little bit. But when the crashes happen, they're bad. Like, and if cars leave the road into the lane of a heavy vehicle, we know that's an incident that can be more severe. So we go through and we fill out lots and lots of information in all of these, and then we multiply them through. And so we take our score here, multiply, get a total score out of 64. Out of 64. And you multiply them down, you get all these scores. And then you can, if you want, add them up to get a total score for the project. And the total score is going to be out of 448. A project with perfect alignment with safe system principles has a score of 0. A project with the worst alignment with safe system principles has a score of 448. Everything you assess will land somewhere in between there. Okay. I think it's right about the time I want to take a break. I'll leave it actually back here while I take the break. Let's go with 4 minutes and we'll get back into it. I want to try and get through a little bit and then give the rest of the time and then give you a little bit of time to download the information you need, get yourself prepared to go and do this. So 4 minutes and we'll get back into it, and I'll have a look at the questions while we're having a break. Back in 4 minutes. Okay, well, I get back into it and people grab their seats again. I'll just answer these questions. So good questions coming around how to assess a corridor rather than just individual intersections or the like. And that gets a little bit more complicated. And there's two options. We have a safe system assessment fact sheet, scoring fact sheet, which we've produced with some help from Victorian government, which seems to be the process. So you do have two options. You can either assess individually, so break it up into homogeneous sections and cluster like intersections and the like, and then produce matrices for each of those. That is the common practice. So instead of, if you're doing 10 kilometers of duplication, well, you're going to do possibly you'll have 10 or 15 different assessment matrices as you've chopped it up. Or there is the possibility to do that as one, but generally you have to do a lot of sort of work behind the scenes, and then you do weighted averages and aggregate it out. I don't particularly like that second one because you sometimes water down particular specific issues by averaging them across the area. But I have a colleague who likes to sometimes do that and play around with it. Regardless of which approach you take, your matrix should cover off all those specifics anyway, so you hopefully would be able to identify those. But those are two options. My preference, as I say, split it up, do lots of matrices. Is there any reason angle is not in the motorcycles? This would also make a difference in severity. It would to a degree, not a huge amount, but yes, it could be. And these, I suppose, are simply some starter dot points. So yes, you could include angle in that. You could include angle in cyclist one as well. But it's not going to have as much influence as car-to-car angle. Adding an extra little bit of degree on a motorcycle crash doesn't have as much of a severity reduction impact as it does for passenger vehicle to passenger vehicle, for example. But yeah, you could include a bit of that thinking. Okay. Oh, hang on. Was there any more?
Yeah, we've just had one come into the Q&A. They're in a rural area with low traffic volumes. Would it make sense to scale down the exposure ratings to better fit our AADTs?
Well, you will scale down exposure ratings if you have low traffic volume, because that's what the scoring reference sheet tells you to do. It's not a decision for the assessors to make. You simply go, what's the traffic volume? What's the score that's in the scoring reference sheet? There's no changing the scoring reference sheet. There's no, we're in a rural area, so we'll bump everything up by a few numbers. No, it is what it is. And as I said before, it does not actually make much of a difference because you're doing a relative assessment. So even if you have low AADT scores for runoff road or because you've got low traffic volume, well, that's going to be the existing conditions. And then you can propose treatments, or they've given you a proposed treatment, and you can see what that does. Well, that makes it even lower or makes it higher or whatever it is. Good. Thank you. Great questions. Keep them coming. So we've done this matrix. We've come up with these scores. And just to show you sort of, you'll have, this is a fairly quick, light one. Some of them are pages and pages long with lots of dot points, but you can see there that the factors that increase the likelihood of crash, factors that decrease the likelihood of crash, dot points, things that have helped them arrive at this score. They've got a 0.5. There you go, Hayden. It's at a 0.5. And you can see there, okay, there's not as much information here because that's just what they had from the traffic volume, but dot points. So this is for the existing conditions, and that's where you start, and you produce this kind of matrix. So the existing conditions, here we go. We've got an existing site, and it's got a side road coming in, and you can have a look at the site, and we're not going to spend long looking at it. But then they've got a proposal to build a roundabout at that location. There we go. We've got a bit of a concept design, a little bit of that's how it could look. Then we've got Another option, okay, here's like a modified T intersection, and with traffic signals through here. And here's a conventional T intersection with traffic signals in there as well. So there are 3 options. And so when you do that first one, you go out there, you look at the site, the existing conditions, you've scored it all up. You've completed your matrix, lots of thoughts, lots of ideas in there. You want to really get this comprehensive and right, because what you're going to do is copy this, and then you're going to paste it, and you're going to then say, right, now if they build a roundabout there, what's going to change? And then you start to cross things out. You say, well, no, that's going to be eliminated. That's going to be eliminated. That's not relevant anymore. Or, but these new things have come up. Or, oh, this new thing's come up. So you can see there, it's all based off that existing conditions to the new things, existing conditions to new things, and you change it. And you change a score, you change the color of that score. And this then helps a reader see, okay, our roundabout's going to do all these wonderful things, but it actually brings up some of these issues. We might need to have a think about that. Then you go back and you take that existing conditions matrix, you copy it and you paste it again, and you get your next design and you manipulate it, you change it, you cross bits out, you add bits in, you change it, you change scores, and then you do it for the third one. Copy the existing conditions, paste it. And if they give you 50 options, you copy that existing conditions 50 times, and you have 51 matrices, because you'll have one for existing conditions, you'll have one for each of these new ideas that they've got. And then you can take all of that, get all your scores. You could make a total score. So if you want to say the existing conditions, 118.5, your roundabout option goes down to 90. Your modified T signals 99, conventional T goes to 105. So from that, what we can say is, hey, yeah, everything you're doing here is getting us a little bit better alignment with safe system principles. Everything you got proposed, from the existing conditions to what will be built, it is better alignment with safe system principles. Okay, nothing is perfect that you're proposing. Of the ones you proposed us, the roundabout was best, but it's at 90, okay? And 90 just is an arbitrary number. The difference between that and that is what you're actually interested in, the difference between that and that, and the difference between that and that. So you can present that however you like to present things. But this then is where we started, and this is what you've been now sort of understand. Okay, I see how he's arrived at that. And I see what that explains to me in association with that fact that the roundabout was the lowest number. They might go, great, okay, well, we know the roundabout's going to give us the highest alignment with safe system principles, but we also know that cyclists aren't going to fare that well there, and that's still something we might want to address. And maybe there's some others we want to address. So then for every proposal they give you, every design, be that the roundabout, this one, the other one, or all of those 50 ideas, concepts they gave you, you give them ideas on how to get these numbers lower. Things that you think of that actually are going to improve the situation. Those are your recommendations. They're not binding. They don't have to do it, but you're feeding in ideas. And that's where you kind of want to know a bit of the context of the project. But we categorize these into primary and supporting. Non-safe system is in here just almost for terminology sense. You're not going to recommend non-safe system aligned treatments, things that make things worse for safety. But primary treatments are really those initiatives that virtually eliminate death and serious injury associated with the foreseeable crash type that you're looking at, you're thinking about. Supporting treatments are anything that's good, that helps, that reduces risk, but it's not going to virtually eliminate risk, because humans falling asleep may still face serious injury or the like, or if crashes happen, it's going to be a challenge. So these are our big step change items. These are usually a little, littler improvements. So we make those recommendations, and it could be, okay, well, investigate a protected roundabout where we've got separated cycle facilities around the roundabout with raised intersections. Here's an example of one in Moray Street. And we'd say that's a primary, because if we do that, we know that it's so effective that it's virtually going to eliminate cyclist death and serious injury at that area. The Safe System Assessment Framework from Austroads actually lists lots and lots and lots of treatments and categorizes them into primary and supporting for different crash types. So you will be able to go to that, look at it. And I'll get Marissa to bring that up as we dive into the learning management system to give you your assignment, just so you can go, okay, I can see where I can get that information, because this is probably one of the hardest things for people to get their head around. They'll want to categorize things as primary treatments when they're really not primary treatments. And I need to also stress here, I'm going to do this with little diagrammatic things to try to reinforce this point for you. Think of these as buckets of treatments. There's different ideas in there. There's different ideas in there. And you're pulling it out of this bucket. Don't think of primary as your number one idea. You may come up with 3 primary recommendations for that crash type. Or you may come up with no primary recommendations and they're all supporting recommendations, because they all came out of this bucket. You said, I can't even think of a way to get a primary treatment, or I just can't think of one that's feasible in that location or for some reason. So don't think about it as number one. Think about, that's the bucket. Now I'm taking that one out of the primary bucket, or I'm taking that one out of the supporting bucket. Okay, so that's got us nicely to a point where we've got this matrix filled out. We've got lots of numbers. We've got lots of thoughts. We've got a graph. We've got some recommendations and ideas. Okay, the other thing we need to be thinking about are the wider elements of the safe system, the road users, the vehicles, the post-crash care. Now, it's up to you as to where you do this in the stage of a safe system assessment. Personally, if I'm involved in the team and we're in that sit down or Teams meeting with the project team, I will go through these questions early on, because they sometimes spark ideas, thoughts. People know stuff, they tell you information, and you factor that in. Theoretically, though, this can be done after you've done a lot of that, and then you might look. But they are trying to ask qualitative questions about these specific issues. So we're not going to put numbers to these. We're just going to put ideas, thoughts, things that you've picked up along the way. Are road users likely to be alert and compliant? And are there factors that might influence this? What are the expected compliance enforcement levels of alcohol, drugs, speed, road rules, driving hours? What's the likelihood of driver fatigue? Is this in the middle of nowhere, out between two towns, 5 hours from Sydney, or are we talking about in the centre of Sydney? Can enforcement of these activities be conducted safely? Are there special road users, entertainment precinct, elderly, on-road activities, motorcycle particular route, distraction by environmental factors? Are there any wider things that we need to know about from that safety perspective? And you're writing lots of little dot points under this and things you note, and then they sometimes elicit recommendations to the project team. Or sometimes you go, actually, I'm seeing this is an amazing amount of elderly people here. I wonder whether our severity scores need to go up a little bit, just because of the frailty of the actual people crossing the road here. It'll take a fair bit to actually jump that up. But if you're connecting the aged care centre to the shops or something like that with a crossing, well, you might start to factor a little bit more of that into what you're thinking there. So what is the level of alignment with the ideals of safer vehicle? A weird question. It's strange. It was actually originally intended because you can take this methodology and do a safe system assessment on an entire community, on a mining site, on an operation, and you can analyze their vehicle fleet for safety features as well. Most practical safe system assessments that happen these days are for road-related projects, and so this doesn't make a lot of sense, and most people just sort of put not applicable or nothing of note. Are there factors that might attract a large number of unsafe vehicles? Is percentage of heavy vehicles too high? What's some recreational motorcycle activity? Have we got resources to detect non-roadworthy overloaded vehicles? Can enforcement of these activities be undertaken safely? Has vehicle breakdown been catered for? And then we go into post-crash care. Are there issues that might influence safe and efficient post-crash care? Is this in the middle of nowhere? Is this up in the mountains, very hard to get to? Do emergency medical services operate as efficiently and rapidly as possible? Are people protected during that crash event? And are drivers provided information? And this one down here is sort of another sort of one. So is there provision for e-safety? So safety systems based on modern information, communication technology, cooperative ITS, so cooperative intelligent transport systems. This is sort of a vehicles of the future question, and are we providing good comms? Are we able to take advantage of advanced features? And it's a general question. These are all general questions to spark thoughts. Now, just to practically tell you what sort of things have come out of these questions, and when you're asking and talking about it with the team and with others and getting ideas, things that I can immediately remember from different safe system assessments in the past. Up in the mountainous area in New Zealand, actually, identifying and asking these questions around post-crash care and how they go getting injured, especially motorcyclists, out of these areas. Very difficult to get there. It takes a long time. Helicopters, can really only land at the bottom of these areas because of straits. And we say, well, what about looking into helicopter landing areas? Is there the ability to create some of those? What are the issues? And just throw that out there. And then they ended up doing that as part of the road safety infrastructure upgrades they were looking at. They built these helicopter landing areas, cleared out a little bit of area, and they sort of had some stack sites that they were able to use for that. Other ones have been around enforcement, big new duplication jobs with continuous barrier system. And they said, well, okay, what can we do enforcement now? And how does that happen? Where are they going to put the number plate recognition vehicle? Are they going to be able to, do they have to block the road? Is it going to be safe? What's going to change? Can they use their radars if there's barriers in the middle of the road? And working with them, there was again the ability to utilize some of the area in this, many hundreds of millions of dollar project to actually create purpose-built enforcement areas where they just had, breaks in the barrier with appropriate end cushion terminals and everything, in a nice area where they were actually able to have up the road number plate recognition in a safe, protected area. They're also able to then be essentially flagging vehicles in to a particular area. And it was just like a purpose-built enforcement area, which was really no extra cost to the project whatsoever. And it just made us be more holistic in our system thinking rather than just the infrastructure. We've had ones where it's working with the pub that's on the corner to say, well, what are you doing with patrons, and what information have you got to them, and how do they leave, and those sorts of things. And sometimes you get things out of that, sometimes you don't. Sometimes they're like a school, and you say, well, we're building this new facility. Has somebody worked with the school to educate everybody on how to use the new facility? Is there good information? Can we do a fact sheet to teachers to talk about that? Is there the ability for somebody to go in and actually run people through the new crossing configuration and these sorts of things? So you see, it's beyond simply civil design these days. It's trying to holistically think about this, and this is where we can assist. We can help out and throw in innovative ideas, extra things. It doesn't matter if they go, oh, we can't do that, or that's not within our realm of stuff. Maybe they'll take that and they'll give it to the community road safety officer and say, hey, we're doing this project. The safe system assessors suggested this. What do you think? Is that something you guys could work on? Are there resources for that? Yeah, that discussion can happen. Okay, So I should just say on this, you just write answers, dot points, ideas. They may feed into the recommendations. They may sort of just sit there. Okay, and a safe system assessment report. I'm going to talk to you next week about the difference between a full and a rapid safe system assessment, or if you're in Queensland, a light versus a full safe system assessment. The reporting, we don't need to sort of run through this because you'll be given a template. So Victorian government, South Australian government template, which pretty much everyone else in the country uses anyway. And you just follow that and it covers off all of these items anyway. I'm happy to send you example safe system assessments that have been done by ourselves or others. So you can sort of see how people are doing it, what they're presenting, but the template will guide you through all of this information. And this is the template, part of the template. And we're using the template, admittedly stripped down a bit. We left things we don't want you to do in there. We just crossed them out. And the reason for that is if you want to actually use this template, you can certainly just unstrike through them, or you can download these templates from Victorian Government website anyway, so you can get your own one anyway. But what we're doing for the assignment, and Marissa's going to jump into the learning management system and show you this shortly, is anything that's highlighted yellow, you are going to have to complete. You're going to have to create your own graph. I think we've even given you a nice little Excel graph generator. Not that you couldn't all make that yourself in 5 minutes, but maybe just make life a little easier. And of course, the matrices, and you're going to fill out all of that information. Before I hand over to Marissa, I just want to talk about the safety of yourselves at the sites that we're going to tell you to go to. We have reviewed each of these sites. We've risk assessed them from an occupational health and safety perspective. They are very low risk sites, as long as you are sensible in it. It's about going to site to observe how it all operates. It's not about measuring lane widths or anything like that, okay? You don't need to be on that road. You can stand back safely, observe, have a look at the site, take some notes, get some ideas, look at your design. Say, oh, I wonder how that will tie into that area. Okay, pedestrians seem to walk, they like that crossing point, but the crossing, this one's over here. How's that going to work? That's what you're doing. Don't spend time on the road measuring or putting your head down or look at things or anything like that. Wear your high-vis vest. All right? Try and stay off the road. Don't be a hazard yourself. Don't make people walk in traffic to get around you. Don't park in places that make other road users at risk, blocking sight lines, pushing cyclists into traffic areas. And we have prepared a safe work method statement, which you will have to agree to. There's nothing in there that will surprise you. It says things like you're not going to go out there intoxicated. And if you have to drive for 5 hours to get to your site, you'll take appropriate breaks along the way. But I'll tell you now, if you had to drive for 5 hours to get to your site, you simply email Marissa and say, hey, can I have a site closer to me? I used to live in Parks and now I live in Newcastle. So please find me a site in Newcastle. We go, no worries, we'll shoot you a Newcastle site. So those actually, but the swims is there. You will agree to that. We're not sending you out there at night or anything like that. And we will though ask for you to prove that you did go to the site with one photo, because that's sort of part of our requirement from different governments who endorse this course and accept this course, who say, well, you've got to have sort of site inspection as part of it, just so people are aware of the importance of actually seeing the site, and they know that process as well. So you'll just prove that with a selfie on site, wearing your vest. At this point, Marissa, I shall hand over to you to take us through the learning management system, show them where they can download their template, find their site, fill out their swims, and then hopefully we'll give them 15 minutes at least or so to get started on all that, check the site's appropriate for them in close by, and if they have any troubles, they'll be able to get in contact.
Yeah, no worries. All right, you can see my screen.
Yes.
We've got module 4 here on the LMS. Again, we've got a module 4 presentation here if you wanted to go back and have a look at the slides that Ken's presented today, but we also will be uploading the recording from today. So that will be available in a few hours from now. So you can check back in and listen into anything you missed or you might want to listen to again. We've got another quiz for module 4. So just pop into here, same as the other ones, just click in, and I might just change my view to a student view so you can see what you'll see. Okay. Yep. So another module 4 quiz for today. So you can just complete that one when you get a chance. We'll give you a bit of time at the end of this. Okay, so the SAFE system assessment, your mock assessment that you'll be doing, here is the, as Ken's already described, here is the Safe Work method statement. If you want to just open that one and you can have a browse of that. There's just a document for you to have a look at. And then as Ken did mention, we do have an agreement that we do need you to, it's here just as a quiz, but we just do need you to just check this off, that you agree and that you be safe out on site and everything that Ken's already gone through. So just have a look at that one. That is a task that you just do need to check off. So anything here under tasks is just something that you'll need to open and complete. Okay, so your assignment, we've got here, complete your SAFE system assessment. Just click into that one. What we have here is a whole bunch of sites that we have uploaded for you, and that should be a convenient location to you. You will just need to find your name against one of the PDFs there. Again, as Ken had mentioned, if the site is just way too far from where you're located and we've got it wrong, please just shoot us an email and let me know. We can easily get that changed for you. If you see another site there that might be just a little bit more convenient to you, we can also swap you over to that site. That's not a problem. Here is the graph generator that Ken did just refer to. We've got a bit of a graph generator there to help you out. Oh, let's get rid of that one. All right, there that one is. So that's there handy for you. You do need to use that. You're just popping in your figures there, and that should all. Okay, I'm going to enable editing. So just popping in your figures there, and that should, probably not popping it into the right places, but that will work for you. Bit of a graph generator there for you. Okay, the sites. Again, we've got a whole bunch of sites here for you. I've got one I can show you. There's just a bit of an example here of the site. Is there anything you wanted to talk to with that one, Ken?
Oh, I think it's just reinforcing here a few things. Your job is to do a matrix for, you will see shortly when the template comes up, a matrix for the existing conditions. And then you can see here, they're planning to signalize their site, it looks like, right? So, so you'll then assess that as it's designed. Now, they're very conceptual level. You're not going to get enough information. Like you're going to want to say, well, what's more, what's the lane widths, or what's the signal phasing, or like, you're not going to get that information. So you just sort of make assumptions and judgments. You can see there that some AADTs have been provided. Sometimes there you can see there motorcycle volume unknown. Well, you might have to remember back to what I said about motorcycle volume. If you are given an unknown, you'll know the site probably quite well, and you might even go, oh, those numbers don't look right. Well, don't worry about that. This is part of the exercise, that you use those numbers, because when you're being marked, it's a check that, okay, do they understand how to use the scoring reference sheet, take numbers from here, find the correct score and give the correct score to that. Don't get overly concerned about, the particular movements and how many are going here and there, because that's, again, you're starting to get too precise with the tool itself.
Yeah.
So then we go to the,
We've got the Word template here. Yeah, so we've got the template here. So you just click on the Word document, open that one. And this is the document itself. So yeah, as Ken has mentioned, if you just going through and completed all the sections highlighted in yellow, I'm going to go through this, Ken. So popping in your name there, and are they allowed to complete this as a team? Ken?
We need an individual assessment submitted. I'm happy enough for you to go out there with somebody else, have a chat about it and the like, but we need your own unique assessment to come in. So if we see two assessments that are identical, we'll be sending those back.
Yeah, so we've got the sections that you need to complete highlighted in yellow. So replacing this with your site. I'll just continue scrolling through. Ken, is there anything you needed to chat to in particular?
The graph you'll put in last, because I mean, you need to do all your matrices and everything to then be happy with your numbers. You plug them in a spreadsheet, copy that. You'll see this one is just a little bit different to exactly what I showed you, because it's broken down the scoring. You've got two scores to put there. Existing conditions. So you'll first of all do this as an existing condition. There'll be nothing scored in design one. So you can see it's in red there. For existing conditions, leave design score blank, right? The reason we've got this, though, is that you'll then copy that matrix after you've filled everything out, except for the design one score. When you paste it, then you'll manipulate it and you'll be able to put in the design score. So here's an example, all right? Existing conditions. See, they haven't done anything in the design score. But then you go down and you'll see even they've done, hopefully, a design example, have they? Maybe not. Yep. Okay, example, design. Now you can see the design score appears. The reason for this is the markers want to be able to check what you're changing there and what the reference score was in an easier manner. So we've given you examples, okay? So you'll be able to do that. Then you make recommendations. You say, here are some ideas that will improve things. These are primary recommendations, and the second table is a secondary recommendations, table 6. You don't put anything in that project response. Our practice is we do it, and then a project officer can take it and go, they can write their own response in there. Go up, actually, Marissa, because I need to stress this. Too many people write, I don't know what you are not the project response. You don't fill out that column. It's not highlighted. Don't do anything. Leave it blank. That's what we do. We hand over, and then somebody, a project team member, would make responses. Yes, we'll do that. No, we can't do this. No, instead of that, we'll do this. That's for them to use. It's in the template. Okay, now keep going down. So there I am at a site. So just give us one.
Replace that with your own selfie.
Yeah, give us, replace me with you at the site in your high-vis vest. And that's the only photo we want. In a real safe system assessment, you probably got lots of photos of the site and different things and different approaches and all this sort of stuff. But for the purpose of this, just give us that one photo. Show us you went to the site. I think that's probably it, isn't it?
I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions on the assignment? We've got question with cyclists, pedestrians and motorcyclists. Is this the total? And we assume a breakdown.
Yeah, as I say, just you can make some assumptions like that. I mean, it's generally going to be the crossing, like for cyclists, it'll be the number that are going through the area. So really, for this, I would just take simply that number that you're given, look at the scoring reference sheet, allocate that number in your matrix. That's just keep it simple like that. Peter, you are more than welcome to Photoshop a moustache on, or quickly try and grow one.
Idea of Ken's moustache. I think I'm going to have to make it available. to the participants.
Okay, we'll give it a couple of seconds if anybody else wants to type in a question, or you can pop your hand up if you want. I think that's been described. What we want you to do now in this little extra time we've provided is do your quiz. So you got that knocked out of the way. Download your site, download the template, download the spreadsheet thing, get it all packaged up so you know, okay, I've got everything I need. I'm ready to do this. And then you can start to do this work. I mean, there is a good few hours work in this if you sit down and you get into it, and then you've also got to go to a site and have a look and build it all together. It shouldn't take you days, but it's going to be more than a half-hour exercise. And we just do need that sort of proof that these things, you understand these, and that's what we really, really want. And I think there was a question on the timing, was there?
Yeah, yes, great question. So we have a due date, which is there on the LMS, but I just didn't point it out, but it is due on the Thursday, the 21st of March. So it is 2 weeks from now. Yeah. And another important note, if you are from Transport from New South Wales and you try to upload a document, I think we touched on this already, but your firewalls are pretty great and don't like us much. So just email us through your submission if you're having trouble uploading it, and we can upload it for you. That's not a problem at all. Yes. Any other questions there? With the existing infrastructure, is that to be included in your assessment if it is adjacent to the intersection and not a part of it?
Yeah, so I suppose that comes back to a little bit of scope of works and where do you actually say the scope of the works are. Take your scope of works as the extent of the aerial image that you're provided, the whole page. So anything that's sort of within that is part of your general scope of works. So certainly, yeah, next to the intersection, within the intersection, that's all generally part of that. Remember, while this has numbers, this is a risk assessment. So you're identifying risks. And it, you know, in that general, okay, the risk is the cyclists coming across there. Okay, I'm worried about that. That's going to be accounted for. It's a risk assessment. Just happens to have a particular way it's done.
We've got a general question coming. Ryerson has seen in Tasmania some traffic impact assessments for developments and driveways using the SAFE system. Is this appropriate?
Some traffic impact assessments for developments and driveways using the SAFE. So using this SAFE system assessment methodology, is that, yeah, it is. It's appropriate. It will spit out. It should, if they're using it correctly in the way if they've been through this course and they've been taught how to use it correctly, then yes, it could be applicable for that. The one question that pops up a little bit there is, where do you define intersection as opposed to access point? And do you account for things in the intersection column, or do you put that in other as access point? For me, it comes down to, you know, actually, does it have a give way sign? And is it, so like often I'll go like a service center exit. I'm just going to call this an intersection. It's got enough traffic coming in and out. Might as well just make it an intersection. But like a personal driveway. So, but that's neither here nor there. You'll account for it in one way or the other.
In this case, then, would AADT increase the risk increase?
Yeah, so if you're making a completely new access point that doesn't exist there currently, the existing conditions would have a 0 score for intersection, or a 0 score for intersection, and then your design would have a score for intersection.
Great. Well, thank you, Ken. I don't think we've got any other questions, so we might finish up a bit early and get everyone a chance to start their quiz and start looking at their sites. Again, any issues with the sites, please yell out and I can help you out there. Not a problem.
Yeah, use your time now wisely. Try and get a bit done and move this along. But if you have any questions, either email through or bring them along to next session where you'll just be in the middle of doing your assessment work, and you can ask them and the whole group can learn from that as well. But we're here and available to help you, coach you through this at any point. Email through. Thanks, everyone. Great session. Good
Thanks, everyone.
discussion. Get into those safe system assessments.
Bye.
Bye.